Nathan C, welcome to the show.
Hello, mate. Thanks for having me.
No, you've been at the top or very near my list for ages, and I've finally managed to track a few people down who have evaded me. But you made me laugh, man. I just texted you there saying, like, are you ready? And I don't know if he was joking or not, but he texted back saying, I'm just doing my makeup, but I've literally just applied some concealer. I had like a photo like session yesterday with my mate Ben. Shout out to Beluga Media, and like, mate, it was scheduled for Saturday, right? And I had the biggest spot on my head, so I said, oh mate, can we move it till Sunday? And then like this other one like appeared yesterday. So I've just put some concealer on, but shouldn't give away
Happens
the
to
old.
the best of us, mate.
Shouldn't give away the trade secrets. But how are you, man? How are you finding? So we are talking in sort of mid-October, and how is life? Before we get into the nitty-gritty of the podcast, how is life for you at the moment?
At the moment, life is great. I'm having a great time. Things are going, amazing. Like, obviously lockdown for as with everyone, it's been pretty difficult, challenging. But I mean, to be honest, I feel like we're kind of built for this sort of stuff, being self-employed musicians and DJs. So in many respects, not a lot has changed. Just sitting in darkened rooms, mate, listening to beats for 8 hours, 12 hours a day, with not a lot of social life. So yeah, it's cool.
I try not to go over old ground that I've covered on previous episodes, but I've obviously missed the club interaction. I've missed the sort of playing music. I've missed that kind of vibe. But I've found it like more freeing really in the studio. Like, I mean, we'll get onto what you do. You're a whole another level above, about 7 levels above me. But like, I've found it weirdly more freeing in the studio. I've been productive in a way in the last 6 months that I don't think I've probably ever been. And I think that was, again, this is different from you, although you'll probably remember this from earlier in your career. But I felt like when I was in the clubs every Saturday, or even in my residency, like looking back now, I feel like I was making records for that gig, like to play that Saturday, and I was almost rushing out a record or a bootleg or an edit or a remix that would work that coming Saturday in that gig. And with not being at gigs and not being in clubs, it's felt weirdly much more freeing to make music. Have you had any of that, or?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it certainly allowed for more time, and it felt like probably more towards the beginning of lockdown, like there was just less pressure to get a certain amount of songs or tracks done within a week. I mean, we were actually at the very beginning of a campaign for our Joy Club single. So there was like a lot of focus on that, and there was like requirements from the label of like, right, you got to do this, got to post that, got to do this bit of content. So there was quite a lot on that. But aside from that, it didn't feel like there was too much pressure, because you weren't thinking about the weekend ahead and having to jump on a plane or a tour bus going to another city and preparing for that gig, and then that takes away from the studio time. So the focus was purely, like you say, on music and just on making tunes, which, that's kind of like, that's why I got into this in the first place. Obviously DJing as well, I love, and got into it at the same time, and it's amazing to do that. But I guess at the heart of it was always from a passion and love for music. So just to be able to focus on that 100% during this time has been amazing.
I come back to that Joy Club thing, and we'll talk about it again later on. But something that's really interested me throughout this whole period as an artist who releases music is the impact that the pandemic has had on people in our situation, and I specifically mean DJs or artists who are releasing music. And obviously I was aware of your Joy Club stuff, and I had that release, Good Times, and I've got a release coming up at the end of the month, and I've had another one, but I've also got tracks that I'm maybe thinking I'm holding back. How did you feel that Joy Club release was different under these times, and how do you think it would have been different had it been a more normal summer?
Yeah, I mean, we would have had the clubs for starters. I mean, the Joy Club single was very much a crossover radio kind of single. Yeah, it's from the kind of dance club world, but inherently it was always, we're aiming for kind of radio. but still, yeah, just not having the DJs and not having the clubs open to be able to, play the sort of, the more club mix versions, for example, on the sort of more underground scene, right through to the commercial DJs that would have been playing it in the clubs. There was just none of that, and I think there's like an inherent connection between successful records and people going out and experiencing those records in a different environment than listening to it in the car or listening to it at home. So we didn't obviously have any of that because we released the single on March the 6th, and then lockdown was like 23rd of March or whenever it was. So and we had a huge video plans. There was like big budget going into it. We'd spent months before going through treatment after video treatment from all these directors. Finally got to the one that we were like, right, everyone's in agreement, this is the video we're going to shoot. And literally I think it was the week of lockdown, everything was scheduled in to go out and shoot the video, and then lockdown happened, and we literally had to scrap the whole thing.
Mate. Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up, for me, you bring up this super interesting point for me, which is I'm working on something now with an Irish singer. Shout to Ryan, Ryan and Ryaness. But we're working on something, and as everyone, mate, you know this feeling. You're like, oh, this is the one. Do you know what I mean? This is the one. This is the banger. But what it's in my mind, and you brought up this really good point, which is no one really heard a record on the radio and had a fucking moment to it. Do you know what I mean? Very occasionally. I remember the first time I heard Kaiser Hideaway was in the car, and I was like, fuck, this is a fucking tune. Do you know what I mean? And I got the hair stood up in the back of my neck, and I was like, oh my God, what is this? And I need this. But inherently, you have moments in fields at festivals, on terraces in nightclubs, in dark areas and dark corners, and moments full of chemicals rushing through your bloodstream. And do you know what I mean? I mean, Ministry, walking through into the box and something's pounding, and you know what I mean? You touch someone's hand or you kiss someone, or and then suddenly that record is ingrained within you as that experience, that emotional memory. And that's how you break records. That's how, especially underground records, get broken. They get broken by DJs playing them, being in Ibiza, being on a holiday, being at a festival, and then they break to radio. And then suddenly, when you hear that record on radio, it feels like this naughty little secret that you had with this record. So totally. I've struggled with that. Like I say again, I'm not at your level, but I've struggled with that thing of going, how do we even break a record without people having those emotional experiences to it? I mean, again, I'm getting way ahead of myself, and we will come on to this later on. But I'm so intrigued with this. As someone that's at your level with stuff, are you already having conversations with artists and labels about holding things back, or is the thought process, no, if we've got a record, we get it out now? What have you heard, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the rules have really just gone out the window now. It's kind of just sometime previously, it was okay, let's say for example the Joy Club record, it's right, we wanted to release it in February, and then it got pushed back a couple of weeks, and then we were going into March, and it was do you know what, the conversations were, we're getting a bit late now because we're trying to catch this for the summer. So that's how far ahead you have to plan with a lot of these things, because the trajectory of a record now, certainly in the more pop dance sphere, is, it's a long period of time to build that record, and this is probably only in the last 5 years or so, because before it was get the record out, as many sales as you can get within the first week, record goes as high in the charts as possible, and then it kind of dies down. Whereas the trajectory now is complete opposite. It's right, we release the record, then we'll decide whether we get some remixes for it in a couple of months' time, because we need to see how the record reacts. We build, and I prefer that way of working. And so anyway, so we felt like we were a little bit late for the summer, not super late, but the year was kind of cracking on, and then obviously lockdown, and then in terms of I think there was that initial thing at a lot of labels where it was well, we just don't know what's going on now, but quite quickly it was kind of business as usual, and it was they're signing records again, and just kind of as normal. I think a lot of the major releases, like your big artists, a lot of those campaigns have been held back, definitely. But weirdly, I think that's why we've seen a flurry of commercial house records hitting the charts over the summer, like your Joel Corrys, Nathan Dorr, because those major releases that they were competing with, you know, your Justin Bieber's, your Ariana Grande, suddenly there's a gap in the schedule. So, and you know, there were great commercial sort of great songs over house dance beats. So yeah, I think just all the rules are out the window basically in answer to your question. And I think it's just like, yeah, get the record out and see what happens, because we don't really know what's around the corner. We could be into another lockdown before the end of the year. But, you know, actually, music's kind of a little bit pandemic proof in the sense that Spotify numbers were hugely up those first few weeks into lockdown, and probably still are, like, year on year. I think I read the other day it was like maybe 22% Spotify numbers were up year on year. So, I mean, that's a huge jump. And that's down to kind of people listening and experiencing music in a different way, i.e. in their homes or in their cars.
Cool, man. Yeah, I think so. Let's go back and hit up the kind of structure of this podcast. So I want to take you way back before DJing, way back before producing, way back kind of into, you know, early years, probably even pre-10 or something. And I just want to find out where the first early musical influences come from. Like, is it parents? Is it siblings? Is someone got a record collection? Is it in the car? Like, just what are you listening to? More importantly, what's being played to you by, you know, family and friends? What are those early influences?
Early influences. So, I mean, I remember specifically asking my parents for piano lessons when I was about five years old. So there was obviously something in me, maybe inherently, that was like musically interested. So yeah, I took up, you know, learning the piano at quite a young age. I remember, you know, in the house, my mum was playing like Elton John cassette tapes, and she likes Motown and all the old soul stuff. So yeah, some of that. And yeah, so that's kind of probably.
Were your parents instrumental? Were they like, you know, was there a piano in the house? Did anyone play an instrument, or did it just come into you in the family?
Yeah, there was a piano in the house. Parents not like massively musical. My dad played guitar years ago. I think there's quite a bit of like, we've got a few musicians in the sort of wider family, so I think there's some kind of like musical genes in there. But yeah, I wouldn't say like my parents were, you know, my mum wasn't like playing piano all the time in the background kind of thing. It was she did have a violin, actually. She played the violin a little bit, not particularly well, but
And can you remember the first? It's different now, but you know, we're of a similar age, and like, can you remember the first bit of music that was yours, like that you held, that you owned, like it was either bought for you or you bought yourself? But can you remember that first bit of physical music that was kind of, that you felt like was yours?
Yeah. Probably Now 34 CD.
I like that. Is that the actual specific number? Like, I like that you remember that number.
Yeah, it was the yellow one with like the kind of yellow and orange.
So
and
hit
like
me
a
with some,
thing.
and I can Google this if you like, but hit me with some of the bangers that might have been on Now 34.
Oh, there was some.
I'm Googling it now, but see if you can hit any.
There was Gina G, who just a little bit.
Oh, what a tune.
What else was there? There was some good like dancey ones as well, I remember.
Mate, do you want me to hit you with some of the highlights on there?
Yeah,
and it is yellow, by the way. Well done. We're rocking Freedom by Robbie Williams. We've got Mysterious Girl by Peter Andre. Now they're obviously the bangers at the top, right? They're the bangers at the top. But when we go a little bit further, Born Slippy at number 7, Underworld.
Classic.
A record that I've just sampled. JX, There's Nothing I Won't Do. You bang on with you just a little bit, Gina G. You've got Don't Stop Moving, Live in Joy. Mate, there's some Jazz It Up, Real to Real, controversial. Wink, Higher State of Consciousness, Robert Miles, Children. Yeah, man, there's some
like in terms of like classic dance, like club records like that. Like there's some like amazing ones.
Yeah, well, that's a good memory, man. So you had that on like, was that to be a double CD or would that have been like a double tape?
Yeah, double CD. Got it for Christmas. Can't remember what year, but I remember getting a hi-fi, my first hi-fi that year. It was like an Iowa, and it had like a 3 CD changer thing, cassette tapes. Oh, it was pretty sweet.
So obviously you're taking piano lessons.
Mm.
Where does the crossover? Like, do you start being in bands before you start kind of wanting to, or even being aware of being a DJ, or is the DJ thing sneaking in, or yeah, where does that crossover take place, or is it a long way down the line?
Yeah, so piano was probably like 5 years old till I was about 10 or 11. Then kind of just got fed up with the practicing.
Okay.
And then I remember being at church with my parents, and they had like a guy playing drums, and I was just like, I want to learn to play the drums. I want to be a drummer. That looks like fun. So I was like, oh, can I have some drum lessons? And then so my parents reluctantly were like, oh, okay, right, we'll let you have some drum lessons. They let me buy a drum kit actually as well when I was about 12, 13. So I think they regretted that. But then
did you join any bands then? Did you join any bands? Start any bands or?
Not really. No, it was just me kind of like playing in my room and.
Okay. And did you find the rhythm of drums more interesting than the melody of piano?
I think so, because like at that age you just like you're hyped up and you got loads of energy, and drums are just great fun, just smacking a few things around. So but then like I really liked as I was getting to sort of 13, 14, 15, like the sound of like UK garage and two-step was kind of coming in, and I was hearing that, at school and starting to come on the radio a little bit. And that was when I think a mate of mine had like a pair of decks, and I just remember going around to his house, and I was like, what are these? Like, what are you doing? And then I was just like really intrigued as to like, how it kind of worked. And then from then, I just got really interested in DJing, and was always quite inquisitive about it. But it wasn't until...
Was that the first time you ever kind of... Because one of the questions I like asking is which it seems a weird question now because we're all so aware of it, but when was the first time that you even became aware that someone was a DJ? Was it that when your mate had decks, or were you already kind of aware that someone on the radio was a DJ? Were you had you been to an had you been to a party when there'd been a DJ? When was the first time that, for some reason in your mind, this, cogitated that person is a DJ and that's what they're doing, is playing music to people?
Yeah, I suppose the first time would have been I went to an under-18s rave with DJ Luck and MC Neat. And that was probably the first experience of like a club environment, a DJ actually playing music live to an audience. And so I mean, yeah, obviously been to like school discos at like a younger age, but like being more aware of it in like your teens, where it's like, okay, this is someone's actually getting paid to do this for a living, and then the cogs kind of turning in your mind is like, oh, maybe I could be a DJ, is that sort of thing. And then I guess around that time was like, oh, I'll go out and like buy DJs obviously have magazines that they read, so there must be something like related to that. So I went out and bought DJ Mag, for example, and then it was like, oh, this is really interesting. And but it wasn't until my parents moved back to Jersey, which is where my mum's originally from. So me and my family all moved over there when I was about 15. And it was at that point that I managed to get a work experience job at a local recording studio in Jersey. And it was this hive of like 7 or 8 studios, guys making like progressive house, guys making drum and bass. And I was just like blown away like by this, by the 3 weeks that I had spent there. And they said, look, we'll teach you how to make music and we'll teach you how to DJ. And I was like, this is incredible. So literally, they taught me how to DJ. There was like a room full of vinyl, a pair of 1210s, and that was where I first kind of like touched a pair of decks and kind of caught the bug, really.
And so how long, because I mean, I've been to Jersey on holiday. It's not a huge place, but it's a lovely place. How long were you there? How long did you go up there? And is that where you really first started to buy records? Was there a record shop on Jersey, or was it a HMV, or like, yeah, because it's not a bustling cosmopolitan, it's not London, it's not Manchester.
No, but there was definitely a scene.
Okay.
And yes, still really good mates with a lot of the guys over there. There was a record store run by a guy called Mal, and I bought some records from him. I can't even remember what it was. I think it was called like CD Johns or something like that. And yeah, that was like the place where
that makes it sound really funny. CD Johns. Obviously, you mean CD Johns, but it sounds
not CD. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that was like the place where all the DJs bought their records, and I started buying records from there basically. And
is this you like club age? Is this pre 18? Is this pre 17, 16? Or are you starting to go to clubs and see people DJ now? Or
yeah, I mean, I got into a couple of raves. I mean, I remember going to see Goldie once on the island, but I was definitely like underage. And yeah, so I was probably around that time, like 16, 15, 16. And then lived in Jersey till I was about 18, 19, and then came back to the UK to do uni.
So what were those club experiences like? I also love the fact that you call it like on the island. Like, I love that. Is that what all the locals call it? Are they like, yeah, on the island? Like, I love that. But yeah, what was club scene like? Like, can you remember like the first? I mean, even tell us about that Goldie gig. What was some of those first club experiences that you had on Jersey?
Yeah, I mean, I just wasn't really into house music then. I was into, it's sort of gone from the UK garage kind of side to drum and bass. I was just like blown away by drum and bass. So they used to get some quite good guests coming over. Obviously Goldie being one of them. So yeah, just like experiencing music like that on a club system for the first time was just pretty amazing, because kind of going back to what we were saying before is like, for me, I was listening to as much drum and bass that I could listen to, but the only way I could really access that was like Radio 1, so Fabio and Groove Rider on 2 a.m. on a Saturday night, and like online as well. But those were sort of the early days of the internet.
And records just sound so much different, man. Like, I remember being a kid, like I remember being 18, I remember going to Ministry to see like Paul Jackson and Jazzy M and stuff at like Rulin. I remember being in Shindig, maybe only 19, seeing Roger Sanchez. I remember distinctly Roger Sanchez, it was like a night, it must have been like the weekend or around the time that Another Chance was released. And he played Another Chance 5 times in a 3-hour set. I mean, fucking respect for that to start off with. But like, and I heard this record and I was like, I'd heard it at home, right? I'd heard it like through my little crappy hi-fi speakers or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I was there and I was like, what version is this, man? Like, what version is this?
Yeah.
And then like I got like backstage and spoke to Jim and I was like, what version is this? And he was just playing just the version I'd heard before on vinyl in the club, but coming through that system. It just sounded it just sounded different.
Yeah, exactly. And it just goes to show, doesn't it? It's like that, having that club experience of hearing a record for the first time, or even hearing it for the second or third time, is actually it's hugely hugely important, you know.
So university, where did you go to university? What did you study?
I managed to get a place at ACM, which is the Academy of Contemporary Music in Surrey, just outside of London. Shout out ACM. And yeah, that was just like an amazing experience. Certainly my first year was just learned so much, and like being able to connect with people who are doing the same sort of thing as me, same sort of goals. I found very fulfilling, really, compared to Jersey, where there just weren't a lot of people kind of into what I was into. I mean, there were some, but there wasn't, not quite at the same level that I experienced like studying at uni, and just the amount of studio time that we got, being able to like just hone my craft really was just so much fun, and just
If I take you back to that first year, right? So if I take you back to like packing up going from Jersey to Surrey, this amazing, institution that you've been accepted into. Can you remember what your sort of thought process was at that point? Like, were you, I want to become the frontman in a band? Were you, I want to become a singer, like a songwriter behind the scenes? Were you, I want to be writing drum and bass? Were you, can you remember, regardless of we'll get on to where you are now, but can you remember what your thought process was at that point? Or were you just open to the experience?
So I just wanted to make music and do a bit of DJing, and you're like make some drum and bass. Like that was what I was into. It wasn't until my first year of uni that I started going along to Ministry of Sound as a young clubber for the first time that actually opened up my kind of experience of house music. Obviously, I was aware of house music, and it was cool, but I wasn't. Again, going back to like the club experience, I remember the first time I went to Ministry of Sound, 18 years old. And it wasn't even in the main room. It was like in the bar in the 103, and this French DJ, I don't think I'd even heard of him, was playing, and he dropped this one tune, and I was just like, what is this tune? This is like, and everyone knew it. Everyone was like singing along, and I was like, how do people even know this song? And like, why do I not know it? And that was David Guetta playing Just a Little More Love, when he was making kind of slightly cooler records.
Yeah.
And that was my kind of like early foray into like the more of the house scene at that time, which was like, all the funky house kind of stuff. And just, I remember getting back at like, caught the first train home back to Guildford, and it was like 6 a.m. and I was just like, right, straight onto LimeWire. I was like, right, funky house, like where can I find all these tunes?
I think you make a really good point. I mean, I remember going back to being like a kid, I remember like buying Ministry of Sound, like the annuals and all that kind of stuff, like, mixed by Boy George and Pete Tong and things. And but I remember going to Ministry for the first time, like going to like, I think it would have been a ruling on a Saturday night or something, similar experience. Like I think Paul Jackson was, again, like probably my favourite moment in Ministry is like 6 a.m. or whatever, last record, I'm in the bar, I'm not in the box, and Paul Jackson's playing like that that bootleg of, is it like Everything But the Girl, Soul Vision thing? And it's got like that beige vinyl cover and stuff. I've still got it, and just having that moment of like, and I don't think I'd heard that record before. And what that whole night reminds me so much of is I hardly heard anything that was on those annual CDs. Do you know what I mean? Like I thought I knew what they played at Ministry of Sound because I had the CDs. Fuck yeah. No. Do you know what I mean? Like all this just underground wicked music that I'd never heard before. And I was like you, I was like, how the fuck do I get this music? Like, where is it? Who makes it? And then that's obviously when you start digging, you get magazines, you go to record shops. But that experience in Ministry is really life changing. So as you're progressing through, had you been making? Are you using any software at this point? Like, because what are they teaching you on this course? Are they teaching you composition? Are they teaching you arrangement? Are they teaching you how to use Logic, Pro Tools, Cubase? Like, what's the sort of things that are actually going on in these? I take it as a 3-year course, but what sort of things are you actually getting taught in these 3 years?
Yeah, so I'd started on Reason actually, which I used to love that program, and that was kind of when I was doing the work experience job, and they just literally gave me a PC with a copy of Reason on it and just said, make music. If you've got any questions, ask us. Well, it was just like crack on. And they were like, mate, when we want tea, make the tea, and that's all you got to do. I was like, this is the best 3 weeks of my life.
Amazing.
So I'd been playing around with Reason, then for a couple of years before I then went to uni. Okay. When I went to uni, they taught us Logic. Okay. So that was kind of a bit, I was like, right, I've got to figure this whole thing out. So that was a bit of a learning curve, like learning Logic back then. I think it was on like Logic 6 or something. But the cool thing was you could rewire a bit of Reason into Logic. Yeah. So there was a little bit of that. And then sort of, I guess like within that first year, I really became like very relatively experienced with Logic itself. So
was there any focus? I'm going to come back to DJ after this question, I think, but was there any focus on, and I'm going to call it electronic music, obviously you know what I mean, and that's encompassing everything from drum and bass right through to house or whatever, but was there a focus on that, or was there more a focus on songwriting? I mean, I know we still think that songwriting within electronic music, but was there more of a focus on more instrumental songwriting, or was there a focus across the board?
Yeah, so I mean, it depended on which route you took, because at ACM you can do like you can learn drums, you do the drum course, you could learn bass, you could do vocals. I was on the production course, so the focus was obviously on production, but there was a real mixture of modules. So we'd be learning stuff about music business, who the PRS are, who PPL are, how do you deal with a record label, right through to like you say, more songwriting based kind of modules, like writing a song, composing a song, arranging a song, right through to recording bands, like how do you record a drum kit, how do you mic up a drum kit, how do you use the desk, and then also the electronic side, like how do you use a synthesizer, so it was really broad.
Sounds like an amazing course, man. That literally sounds...
it was literally like that film School of Rock. It was basically like that.
Sounds unbelievable. We'll come back to production, obviously, but let's take a step into the DJing world. So your mate had these decks at an early age. Did you ever get DJ equipment? How did you go about getting gigs? Were you doing gigs before you went to Surrey? Were you doing gigs in Jersey? Like, talk us through that little sort of the very first steps in your DJ career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I managed to get a pair of Newmark direct drive turntables probably when I was about 16. And then I was just, like I said, buying vinyl and from the record store and CD Johns, yeah, and just like mixing at home really, and kind of learning it and trying to get better. It wasn't really DJing out at that sort of time. It was probably once I started at uni that I was then starting to get gigs and DJ.
Can you remember those first gigs? Can you remember can you remember where you were at? Was it a bar? Was it a union? Where was the first time that you kind of played out publicly?
Do you know what? I'd love to figure out exactly which was like my first one. I don't think. Yeah, I'm not sure off the top of my head. I can remember which was the first one, but I certainly remember it's probably around 2007, 2008. Me and my friends were doing like sort of the back room at Turnmills up in London most weekends. So we'd get like a coach load of people from down this way, drive up to London. We'd all sort of DJ and sell tickets. How you kind of do back then, and yeah, like playing these amazing parties. Obviously, Turnmills, incredible club, and those are sort of some of the early experiences of DJing really.
So then and obviously we're not going to be able to cover everything you've ever done, but so if we move forward towards the end of the kind of 3 years, I take it was a 3-year course, yeah?
Yeah.
So you're coming to the end of the 3-year course. Are you gigging a lot now? Are you earning an income out of DJing, or is it still just a bit of a part-time hobby? What is your plan? Like, have you started really ramping up the productions? Because I mean, I think your first release on Beatport's about 2008. So like, where are you by the end of this kind of 3-year degree? Where are you in your career at that point?
So towards I think it was probably second year going into third year, starting to get the odd gig here and there that was like paid, not like particularly well, but creating some form of an income. Then I had this production partnership with a friend of mine, Ben, called Tastemakers, and we were just making loads of tunes together. We got one of our tunes played by Fergie on Radio 1.
Nice.
It was like his unsigned track of the week. So that
Shout
was
out
like
to Fergie, by the way. What a legend Fergie is, mate. Check him out on Instagram if you don't know him.
That was a big moment, obviously getting played on Radio 1 and by Fergie, like amazing. Got the record signed to a small label called Born to Dance. Paid us the sum of £200, I think it was. Hey. So that was great. It was like, earning money now, and I'm still at uni. Then that was cool. Yeah. Then we managed to get a record deal with Gut Records, who is now defunct as a label, but responsible for some pretty big sort of crossover records. And they gave us a development deal basically, and I think we signed that sort of like the beginning of, no, maybe it was towards the end of, like, just before we graduated. So it was like, there was like a 6-month exclusivity period. And
yeah, I was going to say, so if anyone who doesn't know, talk us through what a development deal is.
Yeah, it's just like deals. You don't sort of hear of them so much these days, but it's where a record label sees the potential in an artist, a singer or an act, and they don't want to commit, I suppose, like as in we're going to give you a big ton of money to make us an album, but we believe in you enough to kind of give you a bit of money to essentially get first dibs on you if you make something that we suddenly go, oh, that could be like a big hit or whatever. So yeah, they gave us a bit of money. Again, like I said, it wasn't loads, but it was enough to come out of uni and actually go, well, I don't have to go and get a job. So that was amazing. So that kind of lasted a few months. I think it was a few months, maybe 6 months. So we had all these like options. So it was like we were working towards basically them exercising the album option, because that would be a nice chunk of money. So we were just like writing and producing records, and that deal unfortunately didn't sort of go any further than that 6-month period. But that was when I first started just very accidentally like falling into engineering, or if you want to call it ghost production for people.
Well, I think there is a difference. I mean, let's touch on that. I mean, there is a difference in my mind between engineering and ghost production. Like, I'll tell you what I think, and you can agree, disagree, and your comment. Like, I mean, you know, I'm very open. I use an engineer. I've always used Mark. Like, I work with Mark, and I'm always in the room with him. Like, we're there every day. I bring ideas. I bring samples. I bring vocals. You know, we work on everything together in the room. And obviously, a lot of people use engineers, and they also use different things. Whether it be a mix, you know, a mixer. People use writers, and we'll get onto what you do for people. But you know, arrangers, you know, writers, all kinds of collaborations going in the background. For me, I think ghost production is either buying a record that's already finished. So if someone says, you know, I want a record, and someone goes, I've got this, and it's X amount of money, and you go, all right, I'll take it. You know, there's that, and I guess maybe that's what I mean. Really, I think that line can be blurred at times. But what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, no, I think that's bang on really by definition. It was what I was doing then was certainly in the camp of engineering, i.e.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm doing all the legwork, but it's someone coming to the studio with ideas, with, like you say, samples or reference tracks, but I think it's also being present within that session as well, because there's a lot of people that can come into those sessions and they go right, I need an engineer, and they pay, you know, someone like myself X amount of money for the day or for the record that's made, and they go, right, pull out the newspaper, sit back, and they're like, crack on. You know, and they're not sort of present. Whereas and I'm not saying that's like everyone, but you do get some people can be a bit like that.
Whereas there's different layers for sure. Yeah,
and it's like, if you're involved and you're sort of taking more of like a director kind of role and being involved, then it's less sort of ghost production-y, if that makes sense.
So from that world, so people are coming to you, paying you X amount of money.
1 sec, I just need to plug in my charger. 1 sec.
Cool, no worries.
And we're back in the room.
For the benefit of the edit, I will have cut out that minute or so that Nathan plugged his charger in, but I can tell you that he is wearing a snazzy pair of trousers or shorts. Look at those, mate. They are spectacular.
That was me getting suckered into Instagram adverts during lockdown.
Oh, mate, yeah, I've bought some shit off those Instagram adverts. I'm still waiting for most of it to fucking arrive. So you're doing some engineering for people. I don't know if I'm about to skip a step, but where you, I guess, became on my radar was I was seeing records, and then also I was seeing you on the lineups, and I think I saw you play, but I saw you at Ministry. Tell me if we're jumping a huge step here, and by all means we'll go back. But where did that association with Ministry of Sound begin?
Yeah, so actually, it was one thing I forgot to tell you. In my first year at uni, there was, I specifically remember them actually on our first day. They sat us down in the room, and there was probably like 30 of us on this production course, and they said, "We're going to be honest with you, music industry is tough. It's like it's not an easy industry to get into, and the reality is like probably 1% of you are going to, make it, whatever making it means. 1% of you are going to make it, and that was kind of quite a bit of a wake up call for me in that sense. I was like, wow, really? Oh, okay. I mean, I'm just going to have to make sure I'm that 1%. So it just kind of gave me that fire in my belly to like, I've got to make something of this, and this is my passion. This is what I love doing. So, I don't want to come out of this working a job stacking shelves at Sainsbury's, for example. So then I just made an effort to make an effort with the people who could hook me up with industry. So there was a particular department at ACM who all their job was to find opportunities for students. So I just made friends with them, and was like, yeah, any stuff you've got, like, I'm interested. And they posted, I think it was just like an email went round, and it was like, look, there's an opportunity to come up. The Ministry of Sound, the A&R department, are looking for an intern. It's not paid, but they'll cover your travel expenses up to London. It's for like 3 months or something like that. And I was like, I think they sent it at like 1:59. I'd responded by 1:59 and 30 seconds, just because I was like, I'm going. That's the kind of opportunity that gets you in the door. That's where you can meet people, you can gain connections. So I was just really proactive about things like that. And so I went up, did an interview, and fortunately they gave me the job. So through that was like my first connection with Ministry of Sound as a company. I was stuffing promo CDs and vinyls in jiffy bags and sending them out to DJs. That was pretty much my role in the A&R department. And yeah, it was just like an amazing kind of learning curve, and to kind of see the all of that going, how a company like that works, and then obviously
who are some of the guys that were working there then? Like, shout out some of the names, see if I know them or anyone else knows them. Who are you kind of working for? Who was in charge? Who else was in the room?
Yeah, so I mean, I was basically Carl Hannigan's assistant. You probably know Carl yourself. Yeah. And then it was like David Dollymore and Depeche they were like A&R. They weren't even head of A&Rs at that point. But now David Dollymore is like president of RCA, and Depeche runs Ministry and responsible for just countless huge hits. And yeah, that was just in the A&R department that I was sort of involved in. So yeah, that was my first experience in Ministry. And then through working there, like, often went to the club as a clubber, and sort of, like I said, my first experience of house music on a big sort of sound system. And yeah, just kind of like made connections with people at the company that ultimately have led to me becoming resident 7 years later and doing all the worldwide tours for the company, and resident at the club, and just warming up for all the biggest DJs that came into town. Like, it was incredible.
Where would you say you honed your house music DJ skills? Was it the back room at Terminals? Or were you in a way chucked in at the deep end at Ministry and learnt on the job?
Yeah, so the Ministry residency at the club, that came later. So I would definitely say from the age of about 18 to onwards was like those early years were like where I was really getting into house music and honing my DJ skills and production skills around that kind of music. So yeah, coming out of uni, record deal, then record deal ending, just carrying on with engineering. Then it was like, right, the engineering was a bit of money, but I needed another source of income really. So I then started doing more like pop gigs, really, like playing top 40 music. You could start as I sort of built that up. Was earning pretty good money. It's quite draining because you'd be doing like sometimes 4 or 5 gigs in a week, and then you've got like 4 or 5 engineering bookings in the week also. It's like
those gigs tend to be long as well. It's not like your 90-minute house set. They tend to be like 4, 5, 6 hours, 9 till 3 or whatever. And if you've got to be up the next morning and be focused on engineering for someone else. And the other thing I would say, I mean, it's been interesting, and I'll ask you this question. Like, I guess the engineering thing's interesting because it's different because you're not working on specifically your own records. So you are working for someone else. Someone's paying you. Someone's potentially there, however involved they are or not there. But it's a different mindset, isn't it, to be working on something that you want to make because it's for you, as opposed to having to do what someone is directing you to do. And that's draining in itself, I think, on top of a 4 or 5 hour set the previous night. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
No, go on, man. Sorry, the question was really like, so you're doing this engineering, you're doing those top 40 gigs. I think you're trying to link into where that ministry thing came, or is that where you were going?
I was just kind of like filling you in on the ministry backstory, really. So we're now talking early 20s, engineering, top 40 gigs. But then I kind of did that for a couple of years, and then I got to this point where I was just like, I'm not making records for myself. I'm not doing like records that I want to make necessarily, just because I haven't got time for it, because I'm making records for other people and doing all these gigs. So it got to, this was probably 2011.
What sort of stuff are you engineering, by the way? We'll come back to 2011. But what sort of stuff were you? Was it house? Was it drum and bass? Was it pop? Were you writing people? Like what sort of stuff in those early days were you engineering for people?
Yeah, so it was predominantly house stuff. You can see that record there. Jason Chance, the beginning on Stealth. So Jason's like one of my best mates, and we became best mates through. We first met DJing at Terminals, actually, back in those days when we were running the back rooms, and Jace was like looking for an engineer, and I started helping him out, and we both sort of live locally, so we've become best mates through that. So it was a lot of stuff for Jace. Stealth, Tool Room, starting to do stuff for Tool Room around that time. All the sort of like typical house labels, like CR2.
That makes sense. So you're very much getting into this house music lane from that early period.
Yeah. And then I suppose it got to like 2011, and I was just like, I really just haven't got that time for my own music, and that's actually why I got into this in the first place. So I felt like, and I certainly don't regret it, because it's provided me with being able to do music full time, but I felt like I'd sort of gone a little bit off track as to where I'd maybe initially wanted to go with things. So I decided to literally just like cut all the work, all the engineering work, all the DJ work, and I actually moved back to Jersey for a year.
Okay.
Because my parents had like a spare room in their house, and I thought, you know what, if I can just focus on my own stuff for like a year, that's all I need to like really like build my own artist profile.
Yeah. So
and I gave. What
is this pre-ministry residency? Is this pre-touring for ministry? Right. Okay. Got you. Right. Yeah.
So I gave up a lot, really.
Yeah.
But so went back to Jersey, focused on my own stuff, and it was great. Like I was just making my own music I wanted to make. Starting to get some like decent support from a lot of DJs, getting some decent signings, and this was kind of, I was then veering more towards the proggy house kind of stuff. And this, I suppose, this was like the early records as it develops into what we now know as like EDM.
Yeah.
And I was taken by the sort of like the more energetic stuff. This was making kind of, my first forays into that, I suppose. And anyway, so I must have been back in Jersey for about 8 months or so, and I got a random call from someone at Ministry. So, "Oh, hi Nathan, yeah, we're looking for residents to join the roster for Ministry tours. Are you interested?" I was like, "Yes." So
hold on, let me think about it. Yes.
Yeah. So flew over to London, just went to meet him for a coffee, and just kind of told him what I was up to, blah blah blah. They're like, yeah, great. Well, this is kind of how the setup is with the tour gigs. We'll be in contact. So a couple of weeks went by, hadn't heard anything. Get another call. "Oh, hi Nathan. Yeah. Basically, we'd love to have you on board on the worldwide tours. Are you free to go to China for 2 gigs, like in 4 weeks or 3 weeks time or something?" I was like, I couldn't get on the plane quick enough. It was amazing, and that was like probably one of my first international gigs, and that was amazing. I was so happy with that, because it was like everything I'd worked towards from going to Ministry when I was 18 years old. Seeing like Toolroom and Mark Knight and people like that and Funk Agenda that I really looked up to. And I remember being in that club once, and I said to myself, one day I'm gonna play in this club. And it took a bit of time, but just that wasn't even club resident actually at that point. It was just the Ministry worldwide tours. So just to be like associated with that brand in that way was like a real like milestone for me.
Yeah.
So that was great. So that was the beginning of all the tour stuff, which then ended up, I think, probably a year later. I just kept badgering them, "Can I play the club? Can I play the club?" And they eventually let me.
and then so we're drifting dangerously towards what is probably, I would easily say the most important record of your life, which is our collab. That we. I mean, it's the thing that changed so much for us. Obviously, I can see that disc in the background. Ours must have fallen down, but yeah. So yeah. I mean, go and check out "This Is Our Night." It's a real good record. So you're getting that residency Ministry. When do you? And again, hold me back if I'm moving too fast. But when do you then move back into not engineering as such, but maybe it is engineering, depending on how you describe it, but into what you probably more predominantly known for now, which would be, how would you term it? Songwriting, engineering, arranging, executive producer? Like, where did you move back into that realm?
Yeah, so I then Ministry residency. So I'd moved back to, as soon as I got the residency, I decided to move back to the UK because it just made a lot more sense. So obviously then your costs kind of go up. So it was like, right, I need to take on a few engineering bits again. But I was starting to get like a couple of remixes here and there, which like paid all right. And yeah, so it was just a mixture of like tour gigs, club gigs, and like engineering, and that kind of like paid my way. And then it must have been early 2013, I got approached by a company called Xenomania, who are a very famous pop production house like company, basically made responsible for making all of Girls Aloud's records, just huge hits, like countless top 40, top 10 hits. Like Google them basically if you want more information. And that again, that was like a really big thing. So I went for an interview with them, had a chat, and they were like, we're looking for producers to come in and help sort of finish off records, and this is in the much more like pop side, but they were interested in the dance music side of things, and that was kind of what I brought to the table with having the experience of house music, I suppose, and all of that. So yeah, I went down for like a trial day, and they gave me a Nadine Coyle vocal to work around, and literally spent a day working on that. And they were just like, wow, this is like, what you've done is like amazing. This could actually be potentially her first like comeback single now, like with what you've done. And I was like, okay, amazing, like this is awesome. Always wanted to get more into the pop side of things. Didn't think it was something I'd be doing until I was like into my 40s, to be honest. But all of a sudden they were like, they loved what I was doing and what I brought to the table, and they said, yeah, just like keep coming back. So kept going down there. And then they offered me a publishing and production deal off the back of going down a couple more times, which was amazing. So that was that just really gave me another string to my bow, really, in terms of like, and I, you know, like I said, I wanted to get more into the pop side of things, and that was probably my sort of bit, like a really good, what's the word, just like a really good experience in terms of pop music songs, like the more songwriting side, and understanding that, you know, I've always worked with vocalists up until that point, but maybe not quite in the same way that I learned from going down there. And just the caliber of people that were coming through, it was like, you know, the Saturdays would rock through, like, and just like M&EK, you know, I was working on loads of his top lines, like back in those days. And those days, I mean, it was only like 7 or 8 years ago, but so just a really, really good learning curve.
And were you balancing that off with, so were you doing this kind of stuff through the week for them, but then you were off still touring and still doing ministry on the weekend? And did you find that easier to balance off than what you were doing previously with those pop gigs and stuff? Did you feel like you had a working week and then you had a gigging weekend?
Yeah, so I by that point I wasn't doing the pop gigs anymore, but because it was just the tour stuff and the ministry and the club, and then doing the Xenomania stuff. So I was down there maybe once or twice a week, but then at the same time I was, you know, trying to do the artist thing and get Nathan C records out there basically, and you know there was sort of remixes coming in, and was getting some good things away, sort of getting decent plays on Radio 1, all that sort of stuff. So there was a lot going on, actually, if I think back. So it's a lot to like manage, and you know, the traveling is like, I love it, but it's draining on you, you know, sort of physically. I know people might struggle to kind of see that, but it's if you come off the back of like flying to China for the weekend and then expected to go into the studio Monday morning 9 a.m. It's just like, okay, right, just crack on. But it's but that's kind of what we sign up for, right?
Yeah, I was going to make that point before, which is like, there's very few things in my career that has been as exciting as that first time that you're getting on a plane to go and play records somewhere else. Like someone's paid for you to be on a fucking plane. Do you know what I mean? Right. And you're like on a plane, and then you get off and someone picks you up in a car and takes you to a hotel and gives you fucking free booze, and you play records and people like it, and then they pay you for it, and you're like, motherfucker, this is unbelievable. But then, you know, the converse side of it is, and obviously we'd all love to get on a fucking plane now and go and play records, but it is draining. It is that the travel is draining, and if you're in the studio Monday to Friday, then like you say, trying to get up with a clear head after doing that is tricky. So then we're moving forward a little bit, and you're working on Nathan C as an artist. Ministry thing comes to an end.
So I mean, this was a bit of a low point actually for me. So it happened around the same time. So I was with Xenomania probably for about 2 years, but they didn't renew my publishing deal. I'd had like one top 40 hit with them. It was on a Saturday's record.
All right, okay,
Saturdays, What You Waiting For? But it wasn't like big, huge, like top 5 smash, which I think they were probably hoping for. And And so anyway, yeah, my publishing deal didn't renew with them. They were kind of scaling down the company a bit because just we weren't having like as many hits as they used to have. And then my ministry gig, I was just kind of like, they were going in a bit of a different musical direction at the club. I mean, this was like peak of like EDM and like the big room kind of stuff. And I think ministry, they wanted to take the club in a slightly cooler direction, which was fine. And there was a few changeovers in terms of staff in the office. So yeah, things just change as they always do. But unfortunately, the two things that were my main sources of income, they just ended at the same time. And I had a studio that I was renting at that point. So I basically, just all the luxuries like that had to go. So I had to get rid of the studio, move all my gear back into my bedroom, which wasn't fun. But that's what you do. You just crack on, really.
And if I take you back to that point, we're not dwelling on it because there's plenty more highs to come. So but just to take you back to that point, like, and you mentioned this right at the start of the show about, we're sort of prepared for this as people who are self-employed. We're used to people just going, no, you don't have that gig anymore. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and just taking away an income, especially as a DJ. So can you remember, like, what was this like, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but can you remember what your plan was? Was there like, right, okay, this needs to change, I need to restack what I'm doing? Was there I need to double down on what I'm doing and I will find a way? Like, what was the sort of thought process at that point? Because that is, like you say, it's a big fucking blow. And what were you thinking? How do I get out of this? What was the plan?
I think the main part of the plan was just like keep going. That's always I guess the best thing. But it's just like, we've got to pay bills, got to survive. So just keep going, keep doing what, I have a skill set. I can make music and I can DJ. So it's just like finding any way of utilizing that really in any way possible. But although I think around that time, I was starting to fall out of love with music altogether. And one of the things I always said was, if I stop loving doing what I'm doing, I'm just going to stop and
it was probably our track,
do
mate.
something.
That's probably what really. That's what probably really. I was like, no, I'm just done now. That is it. I'm out.
No, that was a great track. So yeah, I just kind of was like, falling out of love with it a little bit.
I can identify with that, man. Yeah, I mean, I definitely went through a period like a good few years ago when I just didn't feel like, I mean, I don't need to harp on about it. It's really self-explanatory. You just don't feel like you're making music that you really like, and you don't feel like the scene's going in a way that you want to be part of, and you just lose that kind of get up and go to do stuff. And I guess it's easier for me because I found a way of just checking out of making music and just playing music, and I found a way of reinventing what I was playing, finding different gigs, slightly altering the sound of my residency to suit what I was like enjoying a bit more. But I found it really easy to just go, do you know what then? Like, because I don't earn money out of making music, like I just go, well, I'm just going to stop for a bit. But obviously you as an engineer or a songwriter, like that's not quite the same decision for you. So yeah, what happened? How did you get out of that, or how did you deal with it, or how did you rectify it?
So it was like, as with anything, you just got to pay the bills. So just taking on a bit more engineering work, and I kind of like just figured out other ways of making money. So just on the side, so I was selling secondhand TVs on eBay and Gumtree, and I was making a bit of money out of that. And there was some like random bits of like part-time work. I was like working at the Top Gear racetrack.
Nice. Mate, that's amazing. Tell me, mate, don't think you're getting away with just slipping that in and not going into more detail. What were you doing at the Top Gear racetrack? Are you a Stig? Are we a master Stig? Like on the podcast?
I'd love to say I am or was, but no, definitely not.
So what were you doing?
Basically they used to have like a customer like these experience days, like a track day, so you could go around in the Bentley with the Stig drive you around, or you could do star in a reasonably priced car. So I was like support staff, basically, like signing
Amazing.
customers in,
Yeah.
giving them a little like lowdown of the track, of like kind of like coaching them of like all your breaking points and like how to do the track. We'd get them on like the Xbox consoles, and there was it Forza Motorsport. They had like a recreation of the track, so you get the customers to like practice on that, and then they'd go out and do it for real on the actual track. So I was just working there like a couple of days a week.
Nice,
Which was good fun, actually. It was nice to do something different, but ultimately like music was always in my bones, in my blood. And it was kind of coming off the back of 2016. I completely packed in music altogether for like a month.
Wow.
I took on a role, it's like some sales job working with a mate of mine. I just got to that point where I was just like, I just can't, really like probably lowest point. So quit music, didn't open Logic for a whole month, which is like the longest amount of time I've gone without making music for, and just started like doing this other job. And it got to a point where I was just like, it wasn't like cold calling, but it was kind of like these calls would be set up and I'd be going around people's houses like trying to sell them this product. And was doing it for a few weeks and just really didn't like it at all. I was like, this is just really not me.
There's nothing like I have this experience, mate. There is nothing like a real job to push you straight back into music, DJing, and just working out a fucking way to make it work.
Exactly. Completely agree. So, like I said, I was doing this for about a month, and then one of my engineering clients got in touch. Probably hadn't spoken to him for about 6 months or so, and he was like, "Look, I need this track doing. Are you free to work on it?" And money was quite good, and I thought, you know what, I'm not really getting anywhere with this job. I'm just going to take a day off and do this track with my client. So took the day off, opened up Logic for the first time in like a month, started making it, and I just don't know what happened, but I just was like, got this buzz back, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm really happy with this track. Like, this is what I've been missing for all this time. And I remember that was like a moment for me, and literally the next day called up my boss at this show. I was like, mate, I can't do this anymore. I'm just literally going to go back to doing music. And from that point, I was like, I have to make this work. I have to figure out a way. And it was a really good kind of like kick up the arse, wake up moment of like, no, you can do this. You have a gift, you have a talent. Just like figure out a way. And so, like full throttle. Then a couple of months later, I was just really like back into kind of like myself in terms of like network mode, meeting people, figuring out like opportunities. Friend of mine, Kid Massive, he was like, why don't you try doing sample packs? I was like, oh yeah, I've done some old ones.
Benjamin,
yeah. I'd done some old ones for Tool Room like a few years before that. And they were quite fun, like something a little bit different. So Benjamin was like, oh mate, I've got a link up at Loop Masters. I'll definitely like hook you up. And started chatting with them. They were like, oh yeah, we'd love to do a sample pack with you. This is how much we'll kind of pay you to do it, or the different kind of like ways of structuring the deal.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, great, do a couple of those. And then another friend of mine was like, oh yeah, Capital were looking for DJs for the Ministry of Sound's Capital Weekender show. It's too like commercial, like music wise, it's too commercial for me, but if you want, I can hook you up with them. I was like, yeah, I'd do something like that. I'd love to do like radio, because I'd never really gotten into radio in a big way, other than like doing a podcast a few years ago. So he introduced me to them, and they, at the time, they were like, look, we're full up. We're not looking for any more DJs at the moment. But literally a month went on, and they got in touch out of the blue. And they were like, look, we're looking for more DJs now. We'd love you to come in and like do a like trial sort of thing. So I was like, brilliant. So I went in, and then they were like, yeah, you're great. You're going live on air like this weekend to like 9 million people. I was like, this is awesome, like, and just kind of got that buzz back, you know. Yeah, I was
hear it
playing
in your
like
voice, mate. Even just talking about that little period of time, you can hear the kind of buzz in your voice about it.
Yeah, so and you know, I was playing more commercial music, but you know, still it's a gig, you know, and that when you're self-employed to have that like solid form of income, it doesn't have to like pay all your bills, but just to have something like
that, I always say like it's rent money in it. If you know your rent's paid every month by something, like, you know, one of my favorite gigs I've ever done was like I used to do like every Monday at Digital, which was like a student night. You know, Ministry has a similar thing, I think, on a Monday or a Wednesday or something. And it was like that gig, and I was like, what else are you going to do on a fucking Monday night? Do you know what I mean? Like, go down, play just fucking party, mash up bangers, whatever. I loved it, man. It was like, you know, 1,500, 2,000 kids there every Monday. But it was like, in my head, I was always like, that just pays the rent, man, every week, every month, to allow me Monday to Friday to concentrate on, you know, making music, networking, meeting people, creating podcasts, creating radio shows, like all that kind of stuff that goes along with it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that was great. I loved doing that. And then, it was just kind of really getting the buzz back. And then I ended up, someone sent me a song, actually. I think it was on SoundCloud, just like randomly. And I was like, oh, this is like really good. Like, and we ended up collaborating on it. And then I got it, sent it around to a few like labels, and then ended up becoming like this Matoma single on Warner Records, and they got the Vamps to like vocal it, and then we ended up having like a top 40 hit with that, like 2017. And it was just, it felt like things were starting to snowball from those sorts of like those moments like onwards, and that was me kind of delving more into like that, you know, the more kind of chart pop kind of crossover kind of world, really. Still, you know, still doing like house records and engineering and my own stuff, but it was just felt like it was getting more to kind of where I wanted to get to, i.e. getting signed, you know, in a sort of major deal, and doing like a you know, serious sort of publishing deal, really.
And did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's all happened like in the last 12 months. So
let's talk about, before we go there, let's talk about that single Behind Your Shoulder. So let's talk about the Meduza. Yeah, just, I mean, you don't have to go into, you know, phenomenal detail, but just, you know, talk me through that as a process from the very first, you know, time that you heard about it or were asked about it until, you know, like you say, until that probably leads to the deal that you were just talking about.
Yeah. So, we're talking like 2017, the Matoma record like went top 40, and I think a few people kind of took note of that and sort of seen that I was starting to do, you know, some of this sort of more crossover, these crossover bits, and I was working with anyone and everyone that I could like work with in terms of like songwriter wise. So had these two young lads who didn't really have any track record, but just like super into writing songs, and started, you know, I was working with them for probably about 6 months, and I just thought they were just like really talented, and they were just so eager and just up for it. So we were writing loads of stuff together. Then I got a call from Matt from Meduza, but Meduza didn't exist then. So him and Simon were doing their SDJM project together. Yeah,
they did. Did they do a version of a Backstreet Boys track? Were you involved in that?
No, I wasn't involved in that. Okay. But at that point, I think they'd had the Whitney Houston cover.
That's
and then
right.
So that one had done quite well on Spotify and streaming, and it was around that time they approached me and they said, look, we saw you had the success with the Matoma record, would you be up for like coming and writing for our SDJM project, because we're looking for like more just original songs that can be like within that sort of lane. So I was like, yeah, great, I'd love to come in and write with you guys. So I said, look, I'm working with these two young lads who are songwriters. I think they're really good. They've got no track record, but can I bring them with me? And they were like, yeah, cool. Like, we're in London for a week. Like, just, we've got one day set aside for you, basically. So we went in, wrote for, like, the brief was like vocal, sort of piano-y commercial house. Wrote a song. And they're like, yeah, this is great. Probably I think we'd finish by about 3 p.m., 4 p.m. in the afternoon. And they were like, look, do you want to, we've got the studio till like 6 or 7. Do you want to, like, just start a new idea? So we're like, yeah, cool. So started this new idea, and literally by 6 p.m., 7 p.m., we had all the main parts of Piece of Your Heart done.
You disgust me, no.
But I mean, that's down to the talent of, Josh and Connor, because, they're just super, super talented songwriters.
So Josh and Connor, the good boys?
Essentially, yeah. I mean, this is all pre-Good Boys, Meduza. Yeah. So what happened was... and
how finished are we talking when you say finished? Are we talking like a V1 rough demo? Are we talking like what we essentially heard on radio? Like how finished are we talking on that day?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like all the main vocal melodies, the show me a piece of your heart, piece of your love, and the da 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 da. That was all done like there and then in the session. Even like the the sort of like the classic now Meduza bass line. That was all kind of done there and then. So it was a really quick process, and I find with the more successful records, they tend to come around like that in a really fluid, cohesive, you're not even thinking about it kind of way. And then so like a couple of weeks later, I got a call from their management. They were like, look, we're really excited about this idea that you did at the end of the session. We want to create like a new, because it was so detached from their other project. Yeah, they were like, we want to create this new like artist project around it. We're going to call it Meduza. What do you think? I was like, yeah, sounds great. They said, we're going to do like a bit of like promo, send it out to a few DJs, and kind of just gauge the feedback. But we feel like it's really strong song track. So I was like, yeah, cool. I didn't really think much of it other than it's a cool song. Like,
and to out of my own interest, but also to clarify for people listening, like at this point, are you part of Meduza? Do you think you're part of Meduza, or are you very aware that you were there as a writer, like as a gun for hire? Like is that like, so they didn't even really need to clear these things with you? Essentially, they were being polite by telling you, but they didn't even really need to tell you about it being called Meduza or anything.
No, but they obviously, there was like, you still have to kind of get everything agreed in place. Okay. Yeah, I definitely wasn't like a part of it because it was like their thing, but I was a part of it as a writer, like you say. So yeah, just you were
saying that basically they were going to send it out, but you weren't. Well, I think you were going to say, I don't want to put words in your mouth, I think you were going to say, yeah, I didn't think it was going to be a global worldwide smash.
Yeah. No, of course not. Yeah, I mean, you just do these records it's like the same thing you do every day. Is like you go into sessions, work with new people, work with people you worked with before, and it's the same sort of process, like write a song. But you don't come out of that. I mean, sometimes you come out of it going, oh, that's going to be a big record, and it's not. And then other times, like then, it was like, I just thought it was a cool record that would exist. It might go top 10 on Beatport, and a few cool DJs would play it. But where I was maybe naive in my thinking was that I was thinking at it from more of the point of view of like what was going on in the charts and what people were playing then, because then it was much more commercially piano-y house sort of sound. What I didn't actually pick up on was like it was so different from everything else that it created this lane of its own, because there was a real lack of music like that had a strong song behind it, but also satisfied that kind of cool Camel Fat Disciples sort of sound, and I think that's why it kind of broke through in the way that it did. But I mean, yeah, going on from like just after we wrote the song, they sent it around to a few DJs. It got like really strong reactions. Mr. Jam played it, I think, 2 weeks in a row on Radio 1. And then this like whole bidding war like unleashed for the record. So this was like summer 2018.
Oh, so it got played on. That's really interesting. So it was played by Mr. Jam prior to even being signed to a label.
Yeah, no, it wasn't signed at this point.
That's interesting.
And so there was like huge reaction. Then all the labels like jumped on it. Then they were like, Jam needs to like stop playing this because we're going to set it up for like the following year. So that sort of happened, and then winter came and kind of was just like writing records, and I'd kind of forgotten about it, to be honest. And then I was in a session with Josh Good Boys, I think it was around December or January, going into 2019, and we're like, oh yeah, when's that like PC Heart record coming out? And we was like, oh yeah, like I think February sort of time. I was like, oh cool, like see what happens. And then yeah, the record came out, and just
I think that's my favourite comment. You're like, and then yeah, snowball.
I mean, just completely unexpected. I mean, I suppose actually at that point, like, I realised there was a lot of hype on it. You know, we ended up doing like a single song assignment on the publishing deal because all the publishers wanted to sign everyone's like.
So what does that mean for people
record.
that don't understand? What does that mean?
So a publisher looks after the songwriting interests on a record. So if you're in an exclusive publishing deal, you're exclusively signed to that publisher as a songwriter for a period of usually 3 or 4 years, potentially longer. At this point, I was unpublished, so I didn't have a publishing company representing me, other than for like just single song assignment deals. So yeah, a bunch of us were unpublished as well. So yeah, it was an exciting time because like Sony and Warner's had come in for it, and they were all sort of like outbidding each other, and then Universal came in and we did the deal with them. So so that was exciting.
You don't need to tell me like numbers, but first of all, I mean, I'm asking these questions A because I'm interested, but B, there might be a lot of people out there that are listening that don't know how these things go behind the scenes. So as a writer, how much say do you have in this? Like, do you have any say about where it goes, or are you just sort of being carried along by the management? Like, do you have a say when you're like, oh, I don't want to sign it to Warner, or I do want to sign it to Sony, or are you just going, yes, someone likes the fucking record?
yeah, like you've definitely got a say in these things.
Okay.
Yeah, 100. Probably more so on the writing side, because on the label side or the master side, we kind of just left it up to them with who they ended up going with. And
did you receive? And again, I'm not asking for money here, but did you receive like an advance? Did you receive money in advance of it being released, like when it's signed?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, and you know, that's just for people who don't understand how it works, that's just an advance on future royalties. So you know, they could pay that amount of money, the record could flop, and you know, you don't owe that money back, but they're, you know, Universal in this example would be like out of pocket for that money, so that's a loss for them. But you know, this is the gamble that the big major companies like they take on records. So yeah, and then obviously the record came out in February of last year, and started streaming really well. And yeah, within a month or 2 months. It did take a little bit of time to get going, but I think a couple of months, and suddenly we appeared on like Capital Daytime playlist and Radio 1 playlist, and it was like, oh my goodness, this record's actually going now. And it was like an incredible time, an incredible summer really, of just going to Ibiza and hearing just random DJs play it in their sets, and you know, be all over like radio, and people driving down the street in their cars and you hear it playing out. And yeah, just an amazing time, and everything that we work for as musicians, producers, writers, DJs, you know, from the very beginning, we all aspire to have successful records like this. You don't know where they're going to come from, but for it to finally happen in such a big way, for all of us involved in that record, was just like such an amazing thing. Like, just super grateful for it. Like I said, you can't expect these things, and you don't expect these things. But yeah, amazing.
Yeah, I was just like, you know, the first I think I heard of it was you sort of posting about it on Facebook, saying like, this is going to be a big record. And at the time, I obviously wasn't even aware that you were part of it. Do you know what I mean? I think you were just like, this is going to do real well. And then obviously as it progressed and became huge, I was just buzzing that, you know, that something, you know, good had happened to a good guy. Do you know what I mean? Because there's, you know, and I've known you obviously for years, and I think I'm always happy when something good happens to someone who's good, a good person, because the music industry can be a brutal fucking industry to be in, and we've already touched on, you know, some of the points in your life that were low, really. And then I'm aware we've been chatting for a while, so I will begin to wrap it up in a minute. But I'd like to know what's happened since, really. So obviously, like, you know, we're obviously like the pandemic hit, but how much did that change your life? Did it change how much you were getting paid for engineering? Did it change the people you were working with? Did it not change anything at all? Like, I'm interested to know, like, from last summer, how did that change things for you?
Yeah, like, it changed my life, really. Certainly last year, it was just like people coming out of the woodwork, like wanting to, like, jump in sessions and like, oh, can you come and write for this or write for that or produce for this, produce for that. It's just like, how did you even get my email address? Like, you know, it's like, but it was cool. Like, I really appreciate that people are expressing an interest in what I do.
I gave them it. Like, I gave everyone it. Everyone hit me up. Do you know what I mean? They were like, mate, after that collab, can you hook me up? And I was like, yeah. Sure. I just posted it on Twitter and Instagram and everything, mate. I put it everywhere.
It's all coming out now. It's all coming out. But yeah, no, you know, I was getting thrown into sessions with, you know, huge writers and singers, and just a lot of interest from the industry, like labels and publishers, you know, at the real top end, and the people you just used to think, oh, it's impossible to get through to these people, and now all of a sudden they're all listening to records that I send them and like hanging out with me and like just showing a real interest, and yeah, it was just amazing, and then had like a record that we'd made it was around sort of last summer, and a lot of the labels were sort of trying to sign it from us, which ended up becoming the Joy Club record that we released this year. So
tell us a little bit about Joy Club. How did that come about? Who is it that you do Joy Club with?
So Joy Club is a collaboration between me, a friend of mine called James, and another guy called Rick Boardman, who's a very successful songwriter. He has like a team of kind of, well, they're called the Six, and they're like a songwriting sort of collective, and they've had like big hits, for a number of artists. And we hooked up last summer. I think it was last summer. Earlier in the year, maybe, and yeah, we're just kind of like interested in each other's work, and started to collaborate on songs and various bits and bobs that yeah, just ended up doing this record called In the Night, which they actually originally Rick had written it with the Meduza guys.
Okay.
And they decided not to use it for Meduza, and then I started working on it and changed the production around a little bit, and that became like the sort of single that a lot of labels suddenly became really interested in, and then we decided to create this Joy Club thing based around our collaboration of the three of us, but with Rick more just in the background as like the sort of songwriter, and me and James sort of fronting it as, so, you know, more of a DJ production duo kind of thing.
I think it's interesting, like, that point you bring up, because it's something that I don't think a lot of people who aren't involved in the industry are aware of, is that songs often have these, I mean, you obviously tell the story, and shout out to Ridney and his Secrets of a Dance Hit podcast. I don't know why he hasn't had you on, but obviously a lot of those songs, like you said, just seem to come together in a few hours or a couple of days and really quickly. But other records have this life where they like float around and different people work on them, and vocals get taken off and put on, and they move from this artist to that artist, and they go from being a solo project to being a collab to being this and that. And like, I don't think people who again aren't inside the industry always understand that, like, that sometimes these songs float around a little bit. So it's interesting that, like you say, it started off with someone else, and then that wasn't used for that project, and then you changed the production on it, and then it became Joy Club, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've got a record at the moment that I wrote with Ella Air last year, and we were going to put it out as like an Nathan C thing, and then Alok was interested in it. He did a version of it, and it was like, oh, it's going to be this Alok single. And then, actually, no, we'd sent it to Oliver Heldens before, who'd wanted to do a version of it and take it for his thing. And then he went quiet. Alok then came on board, did a version himself, and then Oliver Heldens like appeared out of the woodwork a couple of months ago. He's like, oh, I've done this version now. I was like, oh, okay, I didn't even know you were still interested in the record. And now it's going to be the next Oliver Heldens single, apparently, I've been told. So it's mad.
Congratulations, mate.
Thanks.
Wicked, man. Well, look, I know there's like absolutely loads more that we could talk about, but I'm also aware that, you know, I've taken up a lot of your time already. So I'm gonna wrap this one up, and maybe in a year or so we might come back and have another chat. But the way I'm going to start wrapping it up is, first of all, if people want to find out more about you, more about Joy Club, more about, what's the other alias that you had that you stuck out something recently on? Was it Tool Room?
Yeah, I've got another thing called Casio, which is an artist project that, again, I do with James, and that's just more like disco house kind of influence stuff. I've got another
if people
project.
want to find out about anything and everything, just use this to plug any links or any follow, any handles. Where can people find out more about you and your music?
Just hit me up on Instagram at Nathan C DJ. I've got links to all my other projects on there. Joy Club, Casio. I've got this other thing called Akiro as well. So I just post everything kind of like on there, really. So. Nice
one. Right, so we're going to finish off with, first of all, we're going to do some quick fire questions. It doesn't need to be an answer, like a one-word answer, but just keep it short. DJ wise, you've just been booked for something, you've got an email through from your agent or whatever. Who do you just see and go, oh God, I've got to play after them? That is awful. I really don't fancy this at all. I don't mean that in a negative sense, I guess. What I mean is like, oh fuck, they're fucking awesome. Like, I really am bagging it to go on. You can say no one, by the way, but I just wonder if there was a name that you saw and was like, oh, you got on after them in the box or something, and you're like, oh God.
I don't know. To be honest, if I was going after anyone, no matter how big they were, I think I'd be buzzing, because, like, I mean, I've played after a fair few DJs at Ministry, and what have you. I guess if it was like someone like super cool, I'd be like, oh, a bit nervous, like Sven Vath or something.
Cool. First club. So I'm talking about probably when you're 18, or if you're not 18, you've got fake ID or whatever. But what's the first nightclub that you can remember going to? Do you remember the name?
Probably Water Splash in Jersey, that Goldie gig that I mentioned. Yeah.
Nice. Track that influenced you the most. I mean, I guess this can be either as a child, or it can be when you do Ministry. It can be that moment with Guetta, but like just a track that has really influenced you as a DJ or producer.
Put me on the spot now. Yeah, probably that. I mean, there's loads more, but definitely that Guetta track, Just a Little More Love. It was just like the funky house kind of vibe to it was like, yeah, really set me off on a path.
Cool. Favourite club you've ever played?
It's got to be Ministry, really. That sound system, just unbelievable. Yeah.
Nice one. DJ that you most like to warm up for. So almost like the opposite of the first question. You get that Ministry booking through, or anywhere in the world, but you get that email through and you're like, oh, that's amazing. Like, I can't wait to play. I know that I'm going to get to play like exactly what I want. And then this guy or girl's going to come on after me, and I'm just going to be like so happy to watch them and have a great night.
Oh, I don't know. Someone like Axwell or Eric Prydz. Yeah. I reckon.
Cool.
Pretty sick, yeah.
If, let's just say, I mean, we'll do it for Ministry, actually. Let's just say you, and this works well for you, let's just say you were playing, you were closing the box or the bar, whichever vibe you want, but you were closing the box or the bar on that last Friday or Saturday night before Boris closed us all down, and you knew you were going to play the last record, not in Ministry ever, but you were certainly going to play the last record, for a good long time in Ministry. What record do you think you would play?
Cool. Don't know. I guess it would have to be something with a bit of emotion, maybe. Maybe something like Kings of Tomorrow, finally, or like, yeah.
That'll do for me. One of my favourite records ever. Right, we're going to do very quickly, a dream gig. So again, it's just like, it's in the moment, it's right now. It could have been different yesterday and different tomorrow, but as we sit here now having this chat, I want a venue. So it can be Ministry, it can be somewhere you know that you've played, it can be somewhere generic like a basement club or a huge festival. So I want a venue that this gig's going to take place. We're going to have 3 acts. It's not so much a warm-up, a middle, and a headline. It's sort of 3 headline artists. You can play. You can create any kind of back-to-backs. You can have live acts. You can have bands. You can have whatever you want. It is just basically a dream gig that you are curating for the purposes of my sheer entertainment, Nathan.
Oh, man.
So where are we going to have it? Where are we going to have the gig?
Well, I can't do Ministry again. I mean, obviously Ministry is amazing, but I can't just keep going back to that one. Maybe more like a beach kind of setting.
Nice.
Like, that would be pretty cool.
So who's going to play?
Like a Fatboy Slim style one, you know?
Yeah.
Brighton Beach.
Brighton, yeah. So we're doing
so
a
like
nice big beach.
Still big crowd, but like beach vibes, sunset, incredible sound system.
Who's playing?
And then who's playing? Eric Prydz, definitely.
Nice.
Can I play?
Yeah, of course.
Right. I'll put myself on the line. I'll just
You,
Eric.
you and Eric.
Yeah.
One other act.
Who else do I like? I don't know actually. Who else? Maybe like Mark Knight or something like that.
Cool. I'm definitely coming. Nice beach, sun out. You, Prydz, 90. I'm down for that. Mate, it's been a pleasure. I'm going to ask you to pick a record to play out the podcast. So it can be one of yours, it can be one of something you've worked on, it can be something that you remember from childhood, it can be something you just heard yesterday and made you smile, but I just want you to introduce the record that's going to play us out and tell people why you've chosen it.
Can I look at my Spotify?
Of course you can, man. Yeah. What are you thinking? Are you thinking one of yours? Are you thinking something you've just listened to?
I think that would be too self-indulgent to play.
No, mate, we're all about self-indulgence on this on this podcast. That's basically the only purpose of it, is my self-indulgence.
Do you know what I really like at the moment? Is that Noizu Summer 91 tune,
mate. Yeah, absolutely wicked.
We were trying to go with that.
Yeah, that is absolute banger, mate. Right, well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Nathan. Thank you for taking the time to chat to me, man. I really appreciate it. All the best for the rest of this year and all the best for next year. I hope to catch you soon.
Mate, thanks so much for having me. Much appreciated. We'll do it again soon, no doubt.